Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Christy Trammell and I'm with the Three Rivers Area Chamber of Commerce. And we have Kathy Abs with us here today too from the Sturgis Area Chamber of Commerce. We are going to interview Steve Carra for the 59th District State Representative. Before we begin, I'll just run through how this meeting will be conducted. We're going to have him answer 3 questions that were provided in advance, and then we'll have a couple of additional questions. Once we finish, then we'll close the meeting. As with all the other candidates, we have mentioned that both chambers did a statement of civility, and that is something that is a code of conduct that we ask all of our candidates to abide by, where they can disagree but not be disagreeable. That's the gist of it, because we want to have this be a respectful event. So we'll go ahead and get started today. The 3 questions that I provided Steve in advance were, please introduce yourself and tell us, why did you choose to run for this office? What do you hope to accomplish while in office? And what do you bring to the table that sets you apart from the other candidates? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so my name's Steve Carra. I've lived here in Southwest Michigan my whole life. And I'd say that the reason I'm running for office goes back to high school. When I was in high school, I told myself whatever I did with my life, I wanted to do something to where had I not done it, nobody else would have. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I thought that I'd go into engineering because I like math and I like science. So I went into paper engineering at Western Michigan University. And after 3 semesters, I tried to envision myself with a 10-year outlook as a paper engineer. And I wasn't passionate about it. I didn't feel like it was my calling in life. And so I thought about it for a while, and I was in the principles of microeconomics class, and I decided to switch my major into economics. And then through working towards getting my economics degree, I decided to go ahead and get a political science degree as well, because I had a lot of courses that I was taking towards the political science degree as well. So I did that, and I think it's one of the best decisions I've made in my life. I'm very passionate about, there's just so much what I say is corruption, both in government and people own favors to large donors and special interest groups. And I think we need people who are going to stay true to their values and come with no strings attached to get in there and to clean up Lansing and Washington, D.C. and all forms of government locally on up. So I feel ready to do this. I feel, very willing to serve. And I think we need people who are going to be beholden to nobody and are going to be representing the people. And then, are you asking me the second question, or am I supposed to memorize that?
Yes, you can complete all 3 questions.
Could you ask me the other 2? I didn't think I was supposed to memorize. I mean, I looked at those, but I don't remember them.
Sure.
I don't know the other 2 questions.
That's okay. That's okay. So what do you hope to accomplish while in office? I think you kind of covered that, but if you have anything to elaborate on that.
Okay, so yeah, I one of my top priorities that I'm looking to work on is I think that corporate welfare is a huge issue, where large corporations and special interest groups get their special deals. And so we need people who are not just going to lower taxes or give subsidies or grants for one group or another group, but if it's something that's available, it should be available across the board for everybody. So I think we need people who are going to stand up for the people. I think the small businesses really get the short end of the stick because they don't have the lobbying power and the capacity to go to Lansing and to advocate for them like a lobbying firm can for large corporations. So I am all for lower taxes evenly across the board for everybody, not just for the privileged few.
Okay. Then the third question is, what do you bring to the table that sets you apart from the other candidates?
Yep, I have degrees in economics and political science, and I've worked the last 3 years for Michigan's #1 most conservatively ranked state representative, Steve Johnson. And so I have that experience. I know how committees work. I know how committee assignments work. I know how relationship building with colleagues work. A lot of the legislators who are already in there and are going to be coming back for their second and third terms I already know and they already know me. And they know that I've worked the last 3 years for Michigan's most conservative state representative, but I would also say most principled. I told Steve Johnson, who I worked for the last 3 years, that on our first day of our first staff meeting, I told him, I said, besides my day-to-day responsibility working for you, I think it's my job to hold you true to your values, not mine, but yours, and to not waver from those. And so that was something that I took very seriously while I was there. And so he still has no strings attached. He's done a wonderful job. And I'm looking forward to joining him and others to stand true for our free market principles, our business friendly principles, and just, making sure that we do good work for our communities.
Thank you. Kathy?
Okay, thank you, Steve. With the loss of state revenue due to the coronavirus, we keep hearing about budgets being cut for our schools, being cut for our local government. What area of the budget do you think you'd move to cut first, and why?
I think that we need to really focus on getting people back to work who are able-bodied. So certainly there's people who, are unable to work, but people who are able-bodied, we need to help people to be able to help themselves instead of just giving people free handouts for so long. This extra $600 a week for people to stay home, I think it's really made an impact on our local businesses who, why go back to work if you can get $900 a week to stay at home? It's a very devastating situation that we're in here, and just people having the opportunity to thrive and to work in a free market where their compensation is higher because the large corporations don't have such bargaining power over employees. So I think we need to really focus on free markets, not corporate welfare, and getting our employees and our employers into a better position to where they both can thrive.
Okay. With that said, undoubtedly there'd be some fallout. How do you handle that? How would you handle that?
It's very difficult. We're in with the financial burden from everything. So instead of giving people free handouts to stay at home this whole time, whether it's from Department of Health and Human Services, there's a lot of places where we need to be very careful with how we're spending money. In the schools, I think we should focus on looking at how much money and how many resources are going to the schools for the value of education that we're getting in return. And is it appropriate for us to have so many administrators in the schools and to be rebuilding our schools with millages and everything instead of just focusing on paying the teachers? If you can hear the teacher, you can see the whiteboard, and making sure that those $8,000 to $9,000 per pupil are spent more responsibly than they are currently. If I was the head administrator for a school, I am abundantly confident that I could do a far better job of being fiscally responsible and returning a higher level of education as our education levels continue to deteriorate. So I think we need to use the money that we have currently more wisely.
Okay. Well, it's no secret the state of our infrastructure. So how would you propose to address the financial shortfall that's needed?
Yeah, so for our roads specifically, what I think we need to do is we need to transfer away from the road commissions and MDOT playing a heavy hand in the decision making for how the roads are built and when, and instead they should have contracts to private sector companies who bid, and it's not necessarily the lowest bidder who gets the contract, but whoever they choose. So they play more of an oversight role to make sure the roads are meeting the certain standards that they need to meet and are up to the quality and the code that they demand. And if they aren't, then the business that the company that got the contract for that stretch of road for say 20, 30 years, that they said we will take and maintain this road for this amount of time. If they are not going to be meeting those numbers that they said they would, they lose their contract and they don't get paid for the next year. So they get paid year after year to maintain the road, but they have the expectation of maintaining the road to that quality. And if they're doing bad work, they're not likely to win the next contract when it comes time. So you have competition and you have to meet those standards, and you better have good quality or you're not going to get another road. You're going to lose your contract. You're not going to get paid for the next year. that's the free market working in roads. That is making good quality roads in a fiscally responsible fashion, instead of having it as it is, where you lay it 2 inches deep, you meet the standards that you need to, they fall apart, and you need to rebuild them all over again a few years later. I think that is devastating, having the government play such a heavy hand in the decision making for our roads.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Steve. And we want to thank you, for your consideration to represent us in Lansing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the opportunity. Sorry, I didn't come with all 3 answers. I thought you were going to ask me all 3 questions at the beginning.
That's okay. That's okay.
That's all right. That's all right.
Thank you for joining us. And
we want to make sure to those that are watching that they get out and vote in the August 4th primary, but then also again then in November 3rd. It's important to vote.
it is.
Thanks again, Steve.
Thank you.